if your employees are actually engaged, because you talked about employee onboarding at the very beginning, and they offer really excellent customer interactions, which happen potentially through chat, right? Studies show that those organizations outperform competitors by 147% annually. So that's a big number.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm Drishti, your host for the day, and today we have a CX expert joining us on the show. If you like our content, you can subscribe to the Engati channel below and you can tap on the bell icon to get notified when a new video is out. So let me begin with the quick introduction to Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 35,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by INC.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, Laura Patterson is passionate about helping companies take a customer-centric data to insights performance management approach to growth. She's a trusted advisor with global customer engagement expertise within the technology, financial services, life sciences, and manufacturing industries. Laura is a result-oriented executive with an entrepreneur experience. She's also a member of the National Speakers Association. So hi, Laura. We are really happy to have you on Engati CX.
Hi, Drishti. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you. You're very kind.
The pleasure is all ours. So I would like to begin with the first question that I have, that we have heard about employee onboarding. So how would you define customer onboarding? And can we set up a similar process just like the employee onboarding?
It's a great question, and the answer is yes. So like employee onboarding, customer onboarding is a process. You know, businesses run on processes, right? And that includes marketing, customer success, all aspects of every part of the business is related to a process. Yeah. And so customer onboarding is something every company wants to be thinking about at the very beginning, like anything else, right? It's something you for sure want to be implementing as a process at that very first interaction with a customer. Okay. So this isn't something you want to wait and do until you actually have a customer on board, but you want to begin the onboarding process at that first interaction so that when they become a customer, you'll be able to have build a relationship that will extend beyond the purchase. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. So like employee onboarding, the goal of customer onboarding is to ensure that a person is successful with your product. So you want employees to be successful and you want customers to be successful. And so whether it's your product or your service, onboarding is designed or should be designed to support success with the adoption. We recommend that like every process, you start it manually before you try to automate it so that you get it right. Because if you automate a process before you have it figured out properly, you can actually it's much harder to untangle it than it, right? So you want to be sure that you have a good manual process before you automate it, and you want to think about the key steps in your process. Would it be helpful to give you some thoughts about those key steps?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So there's that very initial interaction. So there needs to be some kind of way that you're going to engage with and begin the onboarding process. And I imagine Engati is designed to do that because as a product in chat, that's a first interaction. So I'm assuming that you coach your customers on how to begin the onboarding process when people initiate a chat, right? Yeah. So I'm assuming there's some kind of implementation that you're doing to support your customers leverage of chat as part of the onboarding process.
Right.
And then there's some kind of kickoff, whether that's a welcoming message that, at the time that they are trialing or buying or whatever it might be, there needs to be something. And that's where you set and manage expectations. And that's really important in customer success is that each party has some responsibilities for success. So you want to make it clear what those expectations are and what the role is of the customer in the onboarding process. So that's very important. Then proof of concept or value or in-app communication. So I suspect that many of your customers might be SaaS companies.
Yes.
And so they have online applications, maybe in the cloud, right? Obviously, or where however they're done. But they have an in-app application. And so there you have trials or proof of concept. And as a result, there's a lot of communication that needs to occur. And that's a very important series of interactions for onboarding. And there are products out there that can be integrated inside an app to support that process, right? For example, a company I'm familiar with, I'm not recommending them, or then they're not the only one, is UserLane. But I suspect that companies who've used Salesforce or others are familiar with their tracks, right? Their trails, they call them trails. That's an onboarding process, right? And then obviously there's training, which Salesforce is really adept at, and then adoption and retention. So those are some of the primary steps you want to think about. You can get more granular, but at least those as you're thinking about customer onboarding. And it's important to remember to leverage a variety of mediums as part of your onboarding. So again, back to Engati, the chat can be part of the onboarding process too. But so can emails and videos and webinars. So did I answer your question?
Yes, definitely. It makes much more sense when you when you compare it with the employee onboarding thing, that how you introduce the product or train your employee, you can similarly train a customer also coming in. So yes, that analogy definitely makes sense.
Yes, customers need training too.
So what is the circle of traction framework all about?
Okay, thank you for mentioning that. So for those that are listening, circle of traction is what we take people through in our new book, Fast Track Your Business. And it is a framework that we've been using with our customers for over 20 years. We developed it very early on. And the way it turned into a book, just a quick story, the way it turned into a book is we have a chief growth officer that we have worked with as he has moved through his career and many companies. And he often has a growth summit. And so he invited me in each of his through each of his phases in different companies to speak at this growth summit and to share the circle of traction. And a few years ago, when I was doing one for him for another company that he had just joined, he asked me, when are you ever going to put that into a book? And so I said, that's an interesting idea. And I'd already done several books, and books are a labor of love, and they take a lot of time. But so I said to myself, do I really want to do another book? And I decided to bite the bullet and wrote Fast Track Your Business, which is a book designed to take people through the circle of traction. Each chapter is devoted. So the circle of traction takes companies through another process, right, for achieving what we call organic growth. And one of the questions that people ask is, well, where does data fit into that? And what does customer-centric really mean? Because the whole notion of the circle of traction is that it's a customer-centric framework. So our company started as a data analytics process measurement company, really in the roots of strategic and product marketing, and then evolved over time to be what we are today around performance measurement and management and consulting and go-to-market strategies. So what we encourage our customers, and I've always encouraged our customers to do, is to use data and make what we call customer or market-derived decisions. Data-derived decisions for market and customer, as opposed to being a product-centric company or a sales-centric company. So a product-centric company would be that old saying, Christy, if you build it, they will come. That's a product. If they tell you that, you're talking to a product-centric company. And then sales-centric companies, you can tell them because they're all about the pitch, right? Pitch, pitch, pitch. Whereas customer-centric companies and market-centric companies will be different. And the wheel what we call the circle of traction, the wheel, begins with getting insights from customers and from your market. And these insights are what serve as the fuel in the wheel so that you can go through what we call the rest of the nodes. So the wheel is turning, and those nodes are things like, how do you set a business outcome so you'll know what success is going to be when you're driving organic growth? I bet Engati has some kind of goals beyond revenue, right? Yeah. How many customers you want, or what markets you want to be in, or what industries you want to be in, right?
Yeah.
So those would be an example of that. Mm-hmm. And then what are going to be your offers? What are you offering? And what is your strategy for acquiring those customers? Then maybe segmentation. I imagine Engati has some segmentation. Maybe it's size, or maybe it's region, or maybe it's industry, something, right? And then, personas and positioning, and then developing and implementing those programs that you, I'm sure, do to acquire, keep, and grow the value of your customers. And it takes you through that implementation, and it talks about operational excellence and performance reporting and how you optimize what you're doing so you can keep the wheel going. So like all wheels, you have to have an axle, right? So they'll turn. Yeah. And in the circle of traction, we talk about how important your organizational structure and your culture and your people and the quality of your data and how your analytical prowess and your ability to create those processes are to success. So kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that will be useful.
Yes, definitely helps. And is the book out or it? Oh, okay, great. That would be great.
It's out. It's available as an ebook. It's available as an audiobook. It's available on demand. You can get it at Amazon and some other places. We would love for people to come and check out the book.
Definitely. I would love to give it a read as well. Sounds interesting.
We've had really good reviews, so we feel very fortunate. It's called Fast Track Your Business. So if people want to ask me questions about it, happy to answer it. And thank you for bringing it up.
Definitely. So could you take us through the process behind, you just mentioned that making the persona-based customer loyalty systems?
Yes. And, I think we should have a definition of terms, because I hear people use personas and a few other terms very interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. And the three terms I hear them talking about is roles, profiles, and personas. Okay. So let's be I'll pick an example. So a role is what somebody does. And so the role might be a CFO or a CMO, or the role might be a digital marketing, or might be email marketer, right? That's a role, right? And then there's a profile, and the profile says things like what kind of education might they have, and what kind of experience they might have in that role. So a CFO might have a different education and a different role, obviously, than a CIO, right? So what might that be like? And, what is those kinds of things they might do? But a persona helps you understand behaviorally what makes them different. So for example, let's pick a CFO as an example.
Right.
Imagine there are some CFOs that are just about the numbers. They're very, very focused on the numbers. They're very numbers oriented. And they're all about making sure the company can pass audits and do all of that.
Right.
There might be another CFO who is all about risk management, right? So he's a risk mitigation, risk management. How do we make sure we don't end up in trouble? That's a different kind of persona.
Yeah.
And then there might be another CFO who's all about being really a strategic advisor or a visionary for the company. It's really way past just talking about the numbers. Those would be three different personas. And how you would talk about your offer, your product or your service, and how you would communicate with them would be very different, right? Because how you talk to the guy with the numbers would be very different than the guy who's the strategic advisor. And then
yes, right? That does make sense. Yes.
So at Engati, are you persona based, profile based, or role based?
Currently, I think we are role based, but we are trying to. So after a call, then we try and see that okay, this is the persona. So maybe the pitch that we can do is a persona based. So just like you said, so what we kind of do is that we know who the decision makers would be in the company and try and extract people for that role, and then when we see them on social media or have an email interaction, so we can come to know that what their end goal is and which is the persona that you talked about, and when we get on a call then we tell them the pitch accordingly. So right, like you said, if somebody is having a risk management profile, then we tell them that how chatbots can the risk of losing the customers that they have, or if they have infrastructural risks of some kind, then security, GDPR concerns, or the 99% uptime of the platform is something that we would pitch. And if somebody is talking about numbers, then we can just tell them how the revenue would increase. So that is how we pitch or push our messaging accordingly. So yeah, I can totally relate to what you just mentioned.
Awesome. And that's congratulations. And you made a really important point. To do personas well, you have to have good information. You have to have data, and you have to be able to evaluate that data, analyze that data, and look for those patterns to see what are the primary personas. Because you don't want to make them so lean that you don't have enough people in the persona, right? So you're really looking for, maybe 3-4 primary personas for your offer.
Yes. How could we make it like a customer loyalty systems? Like if once a persona is has come or we have registered, so how do you think that the next process would be? Just the same I mentioned, or if there is a detailed funnel or a process that you can tell us?
That's a really good question, and I'm going to answer that with an example. Yeah. So in the financial services industry, especially in banking, there is a company that I think it's still called Claritas, but it may have a new name by now. And when I work which is where I started my career, was in financial services and have been in that space, and we have many customers there. Mm-hmm. They created what you call lifestyle or persona segments, right? Mm-hmm. So it could be, there's the, up and coming persona, and there might be the town and country persona, and there might be the life and leisure persona, of different personas. And so in the banking industry, you want to know those personas so that the offers you make in your loyalty program resonate with them. Because someone who's in one persona, what you offer as a reward or how they might use their reward would be very different than what you might offer someone else. So I grew up in the era of green stamps. This is way before your time. But what was cool about green stamps and my mother is you collected your green stamps and you had these little booklets. But they had a catalog of how you could use your green stamps. And then when they were already thinking about the different personas, because you had some people who would use their green stamps for one set of items and another set of people that would use their green stamps for another set of items. So in a way, they were already thinking about personas way back when in the way they looked at their catalog of rewards. Yeah. So I think it's very important for people who are doing loyalty programs to understand that you may have a bunch of points, but offering points for more rooms for a hotel, for example, to someone who travels all the time may or may not be something that they would want, right? So you have to kind of think through, do they really want to spend another night away from their family? Or how do they make it be something that is, and then maybe they don't even have family. They just don't want to be on the road anymore, right? Yeah. So you got to kind of think about your loyalty program and what you're offering to collect and how they can exchange those points or stamps or whatever it is you're offering to something that is relevant to them.
Yes. That makes
exactly
sense. So how do you think companies can strike a balance between customer-centric and data to insights approach to drive the company growth, and what are the difficulties the companies usually face when doing these things?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And I'm basically going to say that they go together. Customer-centric and data to insights are not separate. They're not unique from each other. They go together. It's really hard to excel at being customer centric if you don't have the insights from data, right? So I think that's a really important message. If I don't say anything else, that's probably the most important message. So remember I said earlier that customer centricity is about placing the customer at the center of your strategy,
right,
in everything that you do. And you're doing that so that you can give the best, create value for them and extract the most value back for your company, right? That's what customer centricity is. So in order to do that, you have to have good data, because how would you know how to create good value? How would you know what's of value to them, right? If you don't have good data. So the data is really important. You have to have really good data, and it's only good if you know how to use it.
yes.
So we have a lot of data today. Lack of data is typically not what a problem our customers face. I mean, there may be still some people out there with those challenges, or companies out there with those challenges, but for the most part, most of our customers have more data than they know what to do with. They're not starving. So the real question then becomes, how do you do something with all that data? And that's where analytics becomes an important skill. And you probably know a lot of people are looking at, how can they use artificial intelligence or other machine learning or other ways to crunch that data, so to speak, as opposed to human beings. But the important thing is, you need to know the right question to ask, so you know what you're looking for in the data, and then you need to know what you're looking at in the data to determine if it's relevant. And the machines still quite haven't figured that out yet. So we still need people that are smart people that know how to do that, so that they can look at a pattern and say, oh, that's a germane pattern, as opposed to, oh, that's interesting, but not really useful or compelling, right? So I think if I were to say customer centricity and data, I would say you need three things. You need really good data. So that's important. You have to have really good analytical skills. You can't just pawn that off on a machine. And you have to know which patterns are truly relevant. And that means you need to be able to ask the right questions and you then use those patterns to formulate a plan.
That makes sense, yes.
Good.
So like you mentioned that you have worked with many companies, and some of these companies are having a customer repeat rate of over 50%. So what are the three key elements that you would say that can ensure that the repeat customer rate is maximum?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I'm going to kind of draw back on my career as an experience, and then the work we do.
Yeah.
So first of all, it all comes down to service quality. I think that's a really important message. And I realize that the Engati chat is all about trying to create an experience and service quality, right? I mean, trying to be responsive, trying to be available, all of that. So good customer service and creating a good experience, it's worth a lot of money. In fact, studies have shown that organizations who focus on customer experience and service quality, they'll see like a 4 to 6% revenue increase over their competitors. So that's like straight to the bottom line, right? So I'm assuming that's one of the stories you tell at Engati, right? Is around that revenue. And then back to employees. If your employees are actually engaged, because you talked about employee onboarding at the very beginning, and they offer really excellent customer interactions, which happen potentially through chat, right? Studies show that those organizations outperform competitors by 147% annually. So that's a big number. Yeah. And in today's world, that's pretty meaningful. So there's a couple of things I would recommend. So is on this topic. First of all, there was a book written in 1990, because I realized we're in a whole new century. So I think sometimes it's hard. People don't remember that there's some really good stuff that came out not that long ago, but maybe seems like a long time ago. So Gary, so let me see, it was Valerie Zimhol, I think is her name, and Leonard Berry and a few other people. They wrote a book called Delivering Quality Service. That's the name of the book. So I recommend it. And basically, they identified what they call 5 dimensions that are valued by customers. And they referred to these, and they actually created a thing called ServQual. So if your customers are looking for ways to evaluate their service quality, there's actually a tool out there called ServQual. And they said there were 5 things. And I think it would be interesting, Trishti, if we looked at those 5 things and how they related to Engati's. So tangibles. This is the physical aspects, right? And in a service world, coming up with tangibles is really important, right? So that, that's a key thing. So like one of our customers who's got a chat, what does the chat look like? What are the tangibles? What are the colors? All those things, the packaging. Second thing is reliability. To, promise, delivering on the service as promised. That's very important. So if you tell your people you're all about customer experience and delivering it on time, blah, 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 whatever your story is, you've got to be able to be reliable on that. And then responsiveness. This is to be very prompt, right? How quickly you can respond. Clearly, that is one of the primary value propositions of Engati, right?
Yes.
And then assurance, making people feel like feel like they can trust you, right? That you exude confidence. And that's really important. Like when you call on the phone to a call center, you want the person on the other side to exude confidence and trust that they are solving your problem. Well, I'm assuming Engati is thinking about how do you recreate that in a chat.
Yes.
And then lastly, empathy. Now, empathy is really important. And that's probably the biggest challenge for any bot, right? It's because bots are not people. And so they can't really express empathy. And so those workflows, people try to insert empathy, like, I understand your problem, or I can see that that's important to you, or whatever. They try to insert that. But genuine human interaction, empathy, and it's one of the most important service quality skills. So this is really a key thing. And the last thing I'll say on this topic is another book that I will recommend. So I have 2 books for your listeners to consider adding to their reading list. And it is a book by Jan Carlzon, who was former CEO of SAS Airlines. And the name of the book is Moments of Truth. Have you ever heard of that book?
I haven't heard of the book, but I know what moments of truth as a context would mean. So that sounds interesting.
It's a great book. And he talks about a moment of truth as any interaction with a customer, any event in which a customer uses or experiences a product is a moment of truth, right? So I'm sure Engati thinks about the moments of truth with people's interactions with your product, right? But that is really critical. And I think a lot of companies don't pay enough attention to those moments of truth, right? That's really important. And that's the most critical thing, is that moment of truth. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I hope that was helpful.
Yes, definitely. That is definitely helpful. And the points that you have highlighted are, completely make sense. And I guess trust and empathy would be the major points where you can give your customers something that they can, they think that somebody has their back when you as a company or a customer give that importance to your clients. So with empathy that you just mentioned, that a chatbot is not something that can solve complex customer queries or can give that amount of empathy, because at the end of the day it is a machine. And with the same concept, what we have done is we have launched the whole new live chat models dedicated with human agents, plus whenever there is a situation which the chatbot is not able to solve, then there will be a human agent available on the other end which can serve your customers. So yeah, that the serve call or the points that you have mentioned totally makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that answers that question as best as I can probably answer it in our time together.
Yes.
And if people have more questions, we have a lot of content on our website on these questions, and they are always welcome to come. It's in our blog, and they're all free. So if people are interested in and find some of this information useful, there's plenty more on our website.
Definitely. I think people will go and check.
I hope so.
So are there any other thoughts that you would like to leave with our audience?
Well, I would only leave it with one thought, which is not mine. It's actually Peter Drucker, who, if again, anyone who is studying business should know Peter Drucker. And one of the things that I remember reading and stuck with me and has stuck with me my entire career is that the purpose of business is to create a customer. And so that's what we have been talking about in time together. And I just want everyone to remember that. We oftentimes get maybe tied up in thinking about revenue or profit or all these other things that we get, focused on. But really the purpose of business is to create a customer. And then, of course, to keep that customer and grow their value comes next.
That sums up the whole conversation and a very key point to know that, definitely.
Well, I really appreciate you guys having me. Thank you. And if anyone has questions, they're welcome to reach out to me either, by email at laurap@visionedgemarketing.com or on LinkedIn or on Twitter. We don't have a bot or a chat on our website yet, but maybe someday we will.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time, Laura. I guess the customer journey, funnels, and the processes that you explained were very, very insightful, and the audience will really enjoy this interview.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure, and I really appreciate you asking me. Thank you again.
Thank you. So we'll be back with a new episode with a brand new expert soon, so stay tuned, and we'll see you around for the next one.